Firstly, let's talk about the prisoners' story. The government is making some major changes to the prison system in an effort to ease overcrowding. Yesterday, the Justice Secretary announced a record expansion.
This is a total capital investment of £4.7 billion. It allows us to start building 3 new prisons. This investment will also fund new cells at existing prisons, with new house blocks and rapid deployment cells opened across the country. And after the long delays under the last government, who allowed their backbenchers to block every project, we are building at breakneck pace.
It's also been announced that offenders who are released early on licence but go on to commit further offences will only have to go back to prison for 28 days. And that's what a lot of the focus is on, because obviously they're spending less time in prison. Until now, most prisoners would go back and serve the remainder of their sentence. Another change being considered is scrapping automatic early release and bringing in minimum and maximum sentences. So if inmates are violent, have contraband or refuse to work, they serve the maximum. If they work, they show good behaviour and take anger management courses, they serve the minimum. It could be as little as a third. And that's another thing, a third now. So we were sort of half your sentence is the basic bottom line, Paulette. Then it was 40% 2 months ago. And now it's gone down to 33%.
I think it's for certain crimes, and I absolutely agree with Shabana that, as you know, let me start there, our prisons are at 99% capacity. It's going to take us some time to build the new prisons. I do believe we need to separate our prisoners. You have got some very high-level prisoners and you've got some very low-level prisoners. I don't think prison is the place for everybody. I think some people have mental health issues. I think some of our prisoners could be rehabilitated in other ways. And I think what Shabana is trying to do is look at ways we can work with our prisoners so that the only option isn't just locking them away.
Yeah. Tim?
Well, I'm glad they're building more prisons because the last government didn't leave a healthy situation. But the kind of people that are being released, these are people who've abused their partners. You know, a lot of it is domestic violence, which is a terrible crime. And there'll be women today who are frightened about who's being released because their partners are coming back into the streets and they don't know what's going to happen to them. So we need to build more prisons. As Michael Howard, the former Home Secretary, once says, prison works. It doesn't rehabilitate, well, it doesn't deter, but what it does...
Was he right about it? I thought we've sort of gone past that a bit in the sense that people do normally get released. And he said prison works because you can't commit crimes while you're inside.
And that's really important.
Well, it is important, but you do get released at some point. Yeah, and if you're released as a worse person, prison doesn't work.
Well, look, what we know is that the vast majority of crimes are committed by a very small number of people. You put them away, they can't commit crimes. That's a basic fact. And while they're in prison, maybe we should have longer sentences, is the logic of your argument, Jeremy. Keep them in prison and people are safe.
Oh, maybe it is, yeah, but then we've got even more crowded prisons. I mean, the other thing here is that if you come out early and you breach your terms, which I would think would be exceptionally serious because you're supposed to be walking the straight line.
People do.
You'll be taken. Yeah, they do. You'll be taken back in for 28 days. I don't understand that.
Look, we've got to look at the bigger issues here. Sometimes people are let out, they've got nowhere to live, their relationships have broken down, they've got other issues going on, and they may have broken the terms of their release. And what the government is saying is they will bring them back in for 28 days, and if they're due to go back out on parole, rather than waiting for the parole system, which could take months to let them out, they will let them out. I believe with support, with guidance, looking at more joined-up ways of working so people can have a house to live in, they can have proper care and support. I believe many of our prisoners wouldn't reoffend.
All right. Jane is in London. You were a former prison warder, I understand, Jane.
Hi, yes. Hello, Colonel.
Hello.
I feel very strongly about this. I have seen both sides of this argument. Being a prison officer for as long as I had, I saw that parole was very much an incentive for behaviour, an incentive for discipline, an incentive for that release, of the alternative of serving a 2/3 of your sentence as opposed to the whole stretch.
Yeah.
It was used for, parole, the kind of impact of, release. However, I'm now on the other side of this as well. My son was a victim of a significant, very, very serious crime when he was 12. The perpetrator was sentenced to 7 years. He was released in January. I believed, and many of our family believed, he was still a risk. He was returned back to prison a month afterwards to serve the remainder of his sentence, to do 7 years. As a mother of a victim, if I had thought for 1 second that there was a risk of him just serving 28 days after breaching the way he did in the similar crime, it shows the wrong message to prisoners who are trying to behave for parole and maintain their behaviour in the community.
Yeah.
And the message it sends out to victims of crime is absolutely shocking, that prison policy and government policy is more important than community safety and victims' rights in this. It's absolutely disgusting idea.
Thank you, Jane, and best wishes to you and your family. Graham in Glasgow, what do you think of this?
Well, unfortunately, the government don't have a choice. We don't have the money, we don't have the presence, we don't have the spaces. We need to change a lot of things, and we don't have the money for it. We don't have enough people in the probation service. We don't give prisoners rehabilitation. We don't give them courses to learn how to do something different and give them a chance.
Well, this is all a bit negative, isn't it? It sounds like you can't see any sunlight here at all.
No, because victims are irrelevant, basically. They're relevant in courts, and they don't get justice. But we've got to look up to the fact we need to change how prisons work and do reforms, and it's going to cost money. Just right now, we don't have the money.
Well, yes, Graham, thank you. I mean, Paulette, that's an issue that politicians don't go into elections saying we're going to build 5 more prisons. They don't ever seem to do that, do they?
We haven't, but as you showed on the clip earlier, as a government now we've gone in, seen the finances. Shabana, the Secretary of State, has been given the finances to make promises, to build more prisons. And what she said this, that it would be built at breakneck speed, I think were the words that she used. So there is a change of policy where they're not going to just listen to MPs saying we don't want it in our backyards.
Well,
they will be building more prisons and building more capacity.
It's going to be such a test, not just for Labour, but for all of us, is can they get, say, to 3 places, you're having a prison here, we don't want to hear any complaints, you know.
There will be complaints, and
of course there will.
And she may say that it's at breakneck speed, and I'm not criticising her, but there's so many legal and other barriers now that mean that consultation takes a long time.
Well, let's see. I'm going to be fascinated. Can you build them in 4 years? I'd love to know. After the break, we're taking more of your calls on whether it's right to release prisoners early. That's why we haven't got the prison places. It seems to be the only thing they can do. It's right to release prisoners early. You tricked me into that, rotter. Maureen in London, back to prisoners. How are we, Maureen?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm pretty well, actually. Thank you so much. About to turn 60, though. That's a facer.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Don't look it. Do I get an extra mark for that?
You do get an extra mark. So, Maureen, what do you think about this prisoner thing?
Well, I think I've got a lot of thoughts on it, actually, but my main concern is that, of course, there are many people in custody that shouldn't be or don't need to be, not don't deserve to be, but don't need to be in custody. That's without question. My problem would be that on releasing prisoners early, very often, the majority of prisoners that would be eligible for any early release scheme would be many of those that are actually on the revolving door already. So we're not talking about long-term serious offenders, which is the target or the specific group that I work with. But I run an organisation that deals with supported accommodation for prisoners on release from custody.
Okay.
And my experience is that, my experience is that there is no provision for them on release. So releasing people into the community is great if you've got follow-up. And we don't have it. It's simple as that. We simply don't have it.
Yeah, and Maureen, it's interesting. I remember when they did that thing where they sprung loads of people early. OK, some of them were silly and they turned up with champagne and all that. But also the other sad part of the story is that they weren't ready to be out, and quite a lot of them ended up homeless, apparently.
Yeah.
No, that's absolutely correct. Of course they do. I mean, it's a case of what you're going to release them into what? Because basically, if you don't have service provision available, you're setting them up to fail. So what are you going to do?
Thank you, Maureen. Bless you. Thank you. So responsive. Every time I speak, Maureen stops talking. Nobody ever does that. Maureen, bless you. Thank you. Michael in Anglesey, hello.
Good morning, Jeremy.
I gather you're a former prisoner yourself?
Yes, I came out last November under the early release scheme, and I don't think it's working because I was quite lucky. I had accommodation, I've had mental health problems which I've had help with, but the probation service can't cope now with the amount of prisoners they've released early. I mean, sometimes I go to my appointment and she's not even there.
Well, you know, one of the reasons they're doing this thing where they basically give you automatic probation is because people are finding they can't get out of jail because there's no probation staff to even do the interview. So so I'm amazed what you turn up and she's not there.
Yeah, and I see one of her colleagues, which happened yesterday.
Okay, and how's that going? They just check you're not drinking too much, you're not getting into fights or what?
Well, they just, normally I'm in there half an hour, she asks me questions and, have a general chit-chat how things are going. But yesterday I was literally in there 2 minutes. She saw her colleague and she said she's going to ring you on Friday for a conversation. So this is happening quite frequently.
And you need that service. This isn't just about checking on the fact that you're not offending. They need to get you settled, right?
Well, exactly. But as I said, I'm very fortunate. I have got somewhere to live and I'm getting support from the mental health team in North Wales.
Right.
But I'm just not getting the support from probation at all. It's just a mess, to be honest with you.
Well, I wish you all the best, Michael.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jeremy.
Take care. I mean, I do think we've got a system in this country where if you commit a crime, you go to jail, you serve your time, you come out, then let's talk about forgiving and moving on.
Absolutely.
Don't you think? Unless the crime that you've committed is part of your identity, and there we're thinking about people who are a danger to children, for example. But for Michael, will have a great productive life if he can get himself straightened out.
He will, but the problem is the support that's needed. As I've said to you before, Jeremy, I'm a nurse, well, a former nurse, and the issue here is many of these men and women that find themselves in prison for whatever they've done, they're crying out for help and support. And when they get out of prison, if you haven't got a roof over your head, that is the first point where you are going to reoffend if you're struggling. So letting them out early, I absolutely agree with what they're trying to do, but the support needs to be there.
I work at the Centre for Social Justice, this think tank, and a lot of the people that go into prison, they're people who've got backgrounds in care, they've never had real parenting in their life. Some people are criminals and they've brought it all upon themselves, but a lot of the people that go into prisons are some of the most vulnerable people in society in the first place, that we failed in the first place to look after properly. So it's a complicated picture.
Indeed. David in Berkshire, hi.
How's it going, mate?
All right, what do you think about this? They're getting people out earlier.
I think it's stupid, mate, to be honest, because I know a lot of people that have been in and out of prison all their life, literally spent maybe 60, 70% of their life in prison. And it's not a punishment for them. They go in there and it's cushy for them, mate. Just get on with it.
Yeah.
Come out, do it again.
Well, what do you do about that? You can't say, look, you can only have one meal a week or something. You can't...
No. I'm thinking more people in the cell, so it makes it more uncomfortable for them.
Right.
So at the moment, it needs to be more uncomfortable for them in there, working, and bring back the chain gangs.
Bring back chain gangs. OK, David, thank you.